if you are an introvert, or you were an introvert before you had to push yourself in certain roles and become a bit more extroverted?
I was the CEO of the very first social network in Russia.
What about other cases? Like how do ideas generally come to you?
Then COVID started, everything went online, and turned out that there is no value in online conferences at all.
For you, it seems like you have started this journey quite young.
If you got to that point at 28, you're doing great.
Evolution of AI, it's going to get worse because we're going to create the unrealistic versions of ourselves.
I did not have a computer and I was writing code on the paper.
Talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and how it changed you as a person.
I love this result, and I'm happy that Todd left me back then, because otherwise I'm not sure that I would have had the chance to become this version of myself, which I enjoy.
Okay, Hrachik, thank you so much for joining the pod today. I'm super excited. This is like a sequel to Hrachik Ajemian's content, which was about 3 months ago. I think we shot an episode with him, but now we're gonna get the other side of the story and then see what are some of the differences in the responses that you get. I'm just kidding.
Right.
But this is gonna be fun, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No, thank you. The honor and pleasure is all mine. You are considered to be a serial entrepreneur. I want to know if you can remember, how many startups have you launched to date?
Right. So the first company we launched with Todd when I was 16, he was 18, was not a startup really. It was a like web development studio. We would create websites and marketing and stuff like that. I don't know if we count that as a startup. That company existed for 10 years, so it was a real thing.
It was a consulting business, right?
Well, we were developing for our clients, like websites and that kind of stuff, software. Yeah. So that was one. Then I was the CEO of the very first social network in Russia. We used to live in Russia back then. It was called Moy Krug. It was the very first social network, and it was acquired by Yandex eventually. And I worked for Yandex, but I did not create it. I joined as a CEO of the company before it got, or even after it got acquired by Yandex. So that's not really a startup I started as well, but I was kind of involved. And then the meaningful startups that kind of worked were Buddhist Group. Buddhist was a social networking app with first of its kind social alarm clock, where you would set up an alarm clock and someone in the morning will call you and wake you up. That was probably my first real serious startup that became something with millions of users and so on. We can consider that like the first real one. Then
is it the Wakey app, or the Wakey was different iteration version of the same?
Okay. Right. Yeah, Wakey is the international version of that one. That one was in Russia. Got millions of users. Then got copycatted. Like many people created copies of that thing around the globe. Because it was unique and it was very successful, and that was the reason for us to move to California and start Wakey here. We wanted to keep our market because people were stealing our our market. So we launched Wakey in California, which is a totally different thing. I mean, eventually Wakey became a social networking app, not just wake-up calls or something. So it's a different company and different product and different startup with everything different, I would say. Then I launched a product called Before. Before was a networking platform for online conferences. Like, when things moved online, turned out that conferences, the best, like the highest value of conferences for people was networking. People would go to conferences to talk to people and meet new people. Then COVID started, everything went online, and turned out that there is no value in online conferences at all. No one is interested the in the in the lectures. Like, people wanted to interact with people, and we created this thing that helped people interact during online conferences. It was pretty good, but we shut down that company pretty fast. We found that. We just found some glass ceiling on that business. We realized that in a couple of years we're gonna get to 10 million yearly revenue and stop there, and there was no way to make it bigger than that. We decided that we don't want to spend years, on something that's not gonna grow at some moment. So we stopped that. And now I'm building my current company called Perch, which stands for People Search. It's a search engine focused on finding people based on descriptions. That's the whole journey.
This is pretty cool. So the common thread that I'm hearing of all of your startups that you've started is basically connection and people. So everything social. And I know, because you told me, that you are an introvert, or you were an introvert before you had to push yourself in certain roles and become a bit more extroverted. Do you think that is the reason why you found this as a problem, like connecting with people, and that's why you've started all of these businesses? Is that a valid assumption?
I think no. It's funny. I've been creating social apps my whole life, but I'm not a user of social networks.
Wow.
I know all social networks. I use all of that. But I force myself to use social networking apps. I naturally cannot stick and retain in those applications. I don't use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, any of those. But I'm registered and I open them, as a professional. I do that. I research those apps. But so I'm not sure if I, as a user, am the right audience for those platforms. I as a user don't feel the need of those platforms.
That is super interesting, because to me, when I'm thinking about a founder starting a company, obviously that's not the case, but I always think like you're creating something based on a problem that you've identified. In most cases, this is a problem that you yourself are facing.
Right.
But that's not the case for you.
Yes, and that's not always the case. If you think of products if you think of products for kids, kids cannot create products for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Adults have to. Or for elderly, like old people usually do not create, all the technology and stuff created for them.
Yeah.
That's one of the cases when the founders are people who have the problem and want to solve it. But another case is people with empathy who can go deep and ask questions and understand someone else's problems and find it interesting to solve the problem, even though it's not their own problem. It's that is my case in most of these cases. It's like I find the problem big enough and intriguing enough to help to find this passion in myself. Like, what if we could change this in the world? That feeling is awesome, and I feel that not only because I personally have the pain.
That's super cool. But this brings me to the next question. Let's think about like Wakey, or Buddhist, you called the name?
It's Buddhist with one D, because it's a play on words. In Russian, it's budit, to wake someone up. Yeah, so it's Buddhist. It's someone who wakes people up. That's what Buddhist is.
Very cool twist there. I love it. But thinking about Wakey, for example, how did you come up with that idea? Like, how did you wake up? Did you see that there's a problem out there that people are facing, and you, like you said, you empathized with them and you tried to really understand, did some market research, so a gap in the market, or was it like, I feel like this is a cool idea, let's do this?
Yeah, actually, this one is my problem. It started as my own problem because it was very hard for me to wake up in the morning, and the wake up thing was specifically created to solve my own problem because
Okay.
um, I found I found that alarm clocks cannot wake me up in the morning, but when
Yeah.
someone was calling me and I had to talk to people for a couple of minutes, and when you talk to someone, you want to be nice and friendly and like socially not very awkward. You have to wake up quickly to do that. And I found that wakes me up better than any social like any alarm clock. That's how the idea came. That what if people would wake up each other and just help each other? So yeah, that was my case.
That's cool. Yeah, that's usually how I think of an idea. Is usually I feel it and I'm like, there are probably other people who experience the same thing, so why not try this? But
Right.
what about other cases? Like how do ideas generally come to you? If you can think of like, oh, I'm sure there are different cases, but usually how do you think like this idea, I'm gonna work on this?
Uh, in my case, it's a mix of two things basically. It's something new you learn about the world, and then some idea of future that comes up, and you feel like, hey, this is where things will go. You just see where things will go. It's eventually, for me, the ideas are things that are like eventually it's going to happen. Question is who's going to create it, how and when. But it's obvious that that is the future is going to look like that. And
Mhm.
then you're like, oh wow, I want to make that future like come faster. I want to work on that.
Mhm.
2 days ago, I had that same thing. Like I was researching all the AI advancements and how scammers use AI to fraud and steal money from people and all that.
Mhm.
And and in a second, I had a very clear understanding of how are we going to solve this problem. And yeah, that's going to be the next product I'm going to launch. I'm very excited about it. I cannot share more right now, but I exactly feel like that this problem is going to be very big. I mean, deep fake. If you think of deep fake,
Yeah.
your parents and friends will be able to call you, talk to you on the video call, and say, "Hey, Lucinette, please help me. Send me money. I have this problem. Like,
Yeah.
it's urgent, right?" And people are going to believe that there is no way to you see your close relative, they sound and behave the way they do in real life.
Mhm.
It's going to be a huge problem. We're
Yeah.
talking about billions of dollars being frauded like that.
And this is where empathy comes into play, where you see it, you empathize with the people who will
Right,
be or are experiencing the problem right now.
right.
Um, if you could tell me, like, out of all of the startups that you worked on, you could pick one startup that you say, I enjoyed working on this the most, or this was the most successful one, based on whatever standards, metrics you have in your head. Like, which one would that be and why?
No, cannot do that. Each of
Okay.
them.
Why?
Every time is different. I mean,
Yeah.
every time you learn new things, experience new emotions during the process, work with new people that you enjoy working with. I don't know, like every time it's very different every time, and every time it's like a great experience. So I
Mhm.
won't be. It's like your kids. You won't select one.
Yeah. It's like when you ask a question, do you love your mom or dad more?
Right,
Similar
right,
question.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
and
fair.
and during your life, sometimes you say my mom is better than your dad is better, and the one once you grow up, you're like, well, mom and dad were both great in different ways. How can I do that, right? so
Yeah. Yeah.
so
No,
yeah,
no. That's totally
that's
fair.
exactly the case.
I completely get that. My next question is, you've been through YC, only when you were building Wakey, correct? Or were
Right.
you okay? So,
No, it was once
mhm,
it was a winter 16 batch.
mhm. What
Yeah.
did YC give you that otherwise you wouldn't have gotten? And I've asked this question to Todd, so I want to see like the different perspectives.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is getting like it saves you, it gives you things you don't have when you're not from Ivy League in Silicon Valley. You are not born here. You're not native. You don't have a lot of connections among rich people, right? And YC gives you this jump from no one to someone respected on the market, which makes it easier to build new partnerships, raise investments, and so on. That's I think the biggest thing YC gives to most companies. Other than that, which comes with all the access to people, to networking, to whatever, and money. Other than that, mindset. YC is all about great culture, philosophy, and mindset about how to build great products, and they're very clear about those things. Like YC's mantra is make something people want,
Mhm.
and that's a very real thing. I mean, 99% of people start startups don't have that mindset. 99% of people who do crypto stuff have no idea about making something people want or something useful for this planet. It's all about, hey, there's this shiny thing, we could make quick money on it. YC's mindset is very different. It's very fundamentally correct, in my opinion. And they kind of show you that there is a way to have a great mindset about making something really meaningful for this world and making billions of dollars on that, not by doing some quick, stupid stuff.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's very valuable for that.
Mhm. Mhm. Would you have achieved the success that you have now and built multiple companies if you didn't go through YC? You think? What do you think?
Well, we've done things before YC and it kind of worked. I think YC accelerates your growth and your success. They would find people they believe will be successful without them and say, hey, can we help them 100x faster than without us? That's
Yeah.
their work. So yeah, I think I personally believe in myself as an entrepreneur without YC's experience, but YC definitely gave me a lot of superpowers. Makes things easier, faster. When I meet new people and I say that I'm from YC, kind of they instantly start, like believing something about you they don't know, right?
Yeah.
It makes things easier. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like a badge of honor. And then people start trusting you and thinking that, oh, yeah, if he went through YC, that means he's onto something. So otherwise, your
Yeah.
ideas wouldn't be as valid to them without that confirmation.
Right.
Can you tell me
Because
this?
most of the guys dreamed of getting there and
Yeah.
never get that result, right? It's like the YC gets tens of thousands of startup founders apply every batch, but they only like accept like 100, which
Yeah.
is crazy. It's like getting into YC is a lot harder than getting into Stanford and Harvard and all the best schools we know. So if you're there, I personally think it's a matter of luck in like because if they have to select 100 out of 10,000,
Hmm.
it means that obviously there were other great guys that
Yeah.
just do not fit into 100. It's not like 100 objectively the best 100. No, it's just some good enough 100 of founders are getting there. and
Hmm.
and YC is people. It's just partners who have emotions and all that stuff and make those decisions as they can, right? Like personally feel like these guys could be pretty successful, but again, they might be wrong, and they are wrong in many cases. They rejected Airbnb like 5 times before they accepted them, and Dropbox, and all the great guys, Stripe, most of the great billion-dollar YC companies were not accepted from the very first attempt. So, like, I think it's a matter of luck. You need to be good enough and persistent enough to get into YC, but that doesn't make you too special. But people feel like if you're in YC, then you are something very special, which is not true, but it helps.
It's not true that you're something very special, but it means that you went through a rigorous process, because even though you say like it's 100 good enough, right? It's not like these are the best founders, but still you went through certain criteria. You went through, and maybe when they selected the first 1,000 people out of all of them, these people, all of them met certain criteria, and then they
Right.
narrowed it down until they matched the criteria that they had maybe for that year. I don't know. I'm not sure how it works, but probably every year they have certain criteria, and maybe it changes the focus, the direction they want to take. But it still means it's still like you said, it's Ivy League batch on you. Like if you went to Harvard, people are going to accept you differently. And if you're a founder, YC, maybe Techstars in certain cases, a bit less than YC, but these are still things that give you credibility, which I think is pretty cool. I want to hear the story of you going to Cupertino and trying to persuade people at Apple that Wakey is not I don't know, like a pornographic type of app. I don't know how they call it, but you did that, right? What did it take you to do that?
Well, that was crazy because we had like similar thing in Russia, right? The alarm clock thing. And it was very popular and very much respected by Apple. Apple would, promote our app all the time. They would reach out to us like, guys, we love this thing. Can we do some internal promotions in Apple Store and so on? So we knew that they kind of love the concept and all that stuff. And we were launching something very similar, but for the international markets. So we knew that we're going to be like from day one, we're going to be loved by Apple and promoted internationally. That was part of our expectations from marketing. Instead of that, they rejected publishing that app. At first, they said that it's a porn app. We're like, guys, what? It took us a few weeks before they finally said, okay, we see this is not a porn app, but then they found some other reason to reject it. And they kept rejecting it for very many months, which was killing us because we could not launch. We were running out of money and so on. It was really hard. And at some moment, it was 9 months of us trying to fight them and not being able to launch the product. We have a team, we have people without salaries. That was crazy. And I was running out of ideas. How else do we push to make sure that they publish our app? Because there is no way back when we fight for things we believe in. You gotta fight till you die. And my at some moment I decided to that I have no more ideas. I need to go to Apple. I just arrived in Cupertino, and Apple is a very closed company. They internally they don't have access to information, who does what, and so on. And even though I knew that, I still thought, well, I have no other ideas, so I'm going to do this. I went to their office and I was talking to people like, hey, who can I talk to about this? And they're like, do you have an appointment? I'm like, no. They're like, sorry, we cannot help you. So that didn't work, obviously. Then I found the vice president of iTunes, who someone introduced me to vice president of iTunes, and I actually met the guy in a bar. We had a very good conversation. He said like, hey, this sounds so stupid. Obviously, your app is totally fine. I will talk to the leader of moderation team. And in a couple of days, he messaged me like, hey, it's all good. I had a conversation with a guy. So publish again. It's going to work. And I'm like, fuck yeah, we made it. And we
Wow.
published it, and they rejected it again after that.
What?
Yeah. And there was like, yeah, we ran out of ideas at that moment, and if the vice president of iTunes cannot change this, like, what do you do? And I came up with my, like, another last idea, that I will email Tim Cook. I found the email of Tim Cook
Oh
and
my
wrote
God.
him this huge email about the philosophy and values of Apple and Wakey, and that we are part of the future and beautiful world that we're creating together. There was a very, like, fundamental email about all the values. And I still have that email in my drafts because I did not send it.
Oh,
I wrote that email, and
it's a
I was like,
bummer.
all right, I'm doing another. I'm uploading the app for the last time. They will reject us, and with this, I'll email Tim, like, here's the latest. Like, we got another rejection yesterday. Here's what they say, and that doesn't make sense. Tim, you gotta help us. And that was like my last idea, because and we uploaded the app, waiting for the rejection to send the email, and they accepted it at that moment. You're like, it made no sense, honestly. It was the only time in 9 months when I was uploading the app without the hope that they will accept it. I was sure that they're going to reject it. For some reason, it got accepted that time. So it was pretty
Insane.
random. So it's still in my draft email.
That's so cool. I think this speaks so much about the importance of perseverance. And like if you believe in what you do and your idea, then you're just eventually are gonna find a way. But how many months did it take you? 9 months to
nine,
get to
9 months.
you could have grown a whole human baby during the 9 months. That's
Oh yeah, some of our employees did. And
okay, guys. While you're figuring this shit out, I'll just have a
yeah.
baby in the meantime.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
crazy. That's the reason why you need to work on startup ideas that mean something to you, because it's sometimes it's so hard that no normal person would keep trying. Like in 99% of cases, any normal human being will say, "Well, this did not work out, right? Like we need to do something else." But when you have this crazy passion and energy towards the thing you're doing, you're able, and this is true for all startups. All the great companies we know went through hard times like this, like all of them. And there needs to be some internal, fire to keep, to keep lighting, keep giving you energy to fight.
Amazing. I love that. And so I think something you mentioned, which is like you need to find startups that you believe in and that you are passionate about, right? Like anything emotional, that association with a startup is super important. But to do that, you need to kind of start with understanding who the F you are to begin with, right? Because a lot of the people when they start the startup entrepreneurial journey, they might like maybe launch a startup that they have no emotional connection with, just to get money, or just to because someone else is doing something similar, I'm just going to try something else. Obviously that's not wrong, you need to try, and then this journey is going to bring you somewhere. But to facilitate this process, to make it a bit easier on an emotional level, and on a to make sure that you persist and persevere, you need to kind of start with understanding who you are. And for you, it seems like you have started this journey quite young, when you try to figure out, okay, what do I want? What do I care about? And I'm going to make the decisions based on that versus on what external people say is right
Right.
or wrong. When was this point in your life that you figured this out, and how would you tell us the story of that?
Well, I'm still figuring that out every day. It's understanding yourself and connecting to yourself, I think, is the most important thing in life. Because because in this world and in anyone's life, there is nothing actually right or wrong. It's all very subjective, right? How you perceive things, and it's all about you being honest with yourself, understanding yourself, and living your life, not someone else's life. Because the world, our parents first, and then like the society would put all these expectations on us, like what you should be. You got to be beautiful, you got to be rich, you got to be this and that. But maybe you are not that. Maybe you're someone who wants to, to spend time in woods with two close friends. Like, maybe that's where your happiness is. You got to be honest with yourself about those things. So yeah, I think I know something about myself, but still learning. So that's a journey that's going to take the whole time I have on this planet. But the first time I seriously questioned that was about when I was probably about 15, 16 years old. That was the first time when I realized that I have no idea who I am. That was the time when I realized that I'm only trying to be like someone else, specifically like my brother Todd. He was he was the biggest authority for me, and I was trying to be as great as him. He was like a perfect version of a human being for me, and I was trying to copy whatever he was doing. There was no idea of finding my own superpowers, internal beliefs, and things like that before that. And there was the moment when I realized that, hey, if it's better to be, it's better to understand who you are and be your true self, even if that person is not going to be loved by many people, but you'll have some internal harmony with what you are, than to be a perfect version of a being that is not content with themselves internally.
Yeah.
That's what I felt, and that was the moment when I started that journey, and I'm in it, and I'm gonna continue that journey till the end.
Mm-hmm. I very much resonate with you because I also, growing up, I have an older sister and I always looked up to her probably because my parents would always show her as an example of beauty standards, of educational achievements and all of that shit. And until about, yeah, maybe 20 something, I was like, oh, well, I'm nothing. Like, she's amazing. I'm nothing. And then my journey of self-actualization, or trying at least to understand who the fuck I am in this world, is started when I was 28, actually. That's the time when I started questioning. I was like, wait, why did I do all of this? Like, I've started this business and then I went to the here and then, but that's not, am I real? Do I really want this? Is this what I gravitate to naturally? And I realized that I need to, like, my whole life crumbled, like in my head. Externally, like
Yeah.
it was all fine, but in my mind, I have no idea who I am. And I'm like, I'm building from ground zero and there's no ground underneath my feet. That's the feeling, the sense that I got from this situation. But I think if that started earlier, probably would have been much easier for me. Now.
Do you have any idea when did your parents come to that idea for themselves? Any of them, or both of them?
I think they haven't.
Exactly. I was expecting that. I think that, like, if they haven't, and if you got to that point at 28, you're doing great. Like your kids are probably have a chance to get there, like even earlier, right? So
Yeah.
like the trend is great. So,
Yeah.
we have like it's yeah, the worst thing we can do is compare ourselves to someone else, right? Because we have all very different background, different DNA, different everything. And here in Silicon Valley, it's so hard. Like everyone is smarter and richer than you. Like
Yeah.
every person you meet in Silicon Valley is awesome. Like and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm nothing, right? And you'll feel that you're nothing if you compare yourself. The only way is to remind yourself, like, hey, I am a unique being just like everyone else. I have my own background and journey, and I need to focus on my stuff. I cannot compare myself to anyone else. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's not. It's so the thing about like the age when we found something important about ourselves doesn't say anything about ourselves. You know, it's like it's great that it happened. That's
Yeah.
it.
I keep reminding myself that because that's also a comparison trap. So Hrachik did that when he was 16 and he is, like he's on the path that's created so much. I did it when I'm 28, like I'm a failure. Again, another way to compare ourselves. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's obviously not healthy. But yeah, it's always better to be a shitty version of myself, of Lucina, than a copycat version of someone else, which it's basically you're creating this external shell of yourself, and then internally you're dying because you're not really you in the process, and you don't know who you are anyway.
That's how
So
you get depressed, right? Because like your external image of yourself and the internal feelings of yourself are not connected. They're
yeah,
like they're very different, and that's one of the biggest problems of social media as what they became. You know, like people on Instagram would try to be the like the versions of themselves that are the most likable versions of themselves,
true.
right? That's why you put the best photos, like the best filters, and only write things about how great you are. And like people would see you as this great, beautiful, successful person who's doing awesome stuff, meeting with best people on the best beaches or
Yeah,
whatever. And then like internally, many of those people are dying, but they have to keep this image of beauty and success. And the more difference there is between your how you are externally perceived by people and how you feel internally, the more depressed you get, and that's a big problem now. Um,
yeah,
that's a real problem in the
it
world,
is a
and
real
that
problem.
we were not ready for that. You know, social networks and social media became what they became pretty quickly. You know, we as a species are not that adaptable. You know, in like 20 years, we're not able to adapt and learn how do we change our culture to stay uh, at least just happy normal people. So
Yeah.
those things are killing us nowadays.
Yeah, I think with the evolution of AI, it's going to get worse because we're going to create the unrealistic versions of ourselves on the socials, and it's going to be we're going to use AI, so it's going to be even worse. I want to pivot to something that we discussed earlier as well, which is natural inclinations. So you've realized that you are interested in technology quite early on, and you kind of leaned into it, and this was the path, a natural direction for you to take. You didn't consider, oh no, wait, I'm just going to go into humanities or I can become a lawyer because that's a
Right.
bit more traditional for an Armenian person to do, for example, right? How can you tell us the story of when you realized that this is the path you want to take, and how natural was it for you to follow this specific area of work?
Yeah, it just happened. I mean, we were not rich as a family. We were very limited on resources. We did not have all the shiny devices or whatever. But I had the chance to touch all the technology that was being created back when I was. So I was born in 1985. When I was like 13, it was 1998.
Hmm.
Um, in 1998, the internet was starting. Personal computers were becoming more normal in most homes, um, and I saw those things in other people's hands, you know, and I had chance to play with them a bit, and turned out that I naturally um, understood those things faster than most people around me. I kind of had this internal intuition how this thing would behave if I do this. What's gonna happen? So I understood the user experience better, the technology better. That was very natural. It was there was not I did not put any amount of education or effort to start interacting with technology. I started programming without having a computer. I bought this book on HTML and JavaScript, but I did not have a computer. And I was writing code on the paper because I loved that thing. And then I found some friend's computer and got access to it, started doing it on their stuff, and pretty much broke the whole hardware they had there. But still, like I was it was a very natural process, honestly. I think all of us have this natural inclinations. Question is how open we are, and do our parents let us be open to trying new things or not? You know, if you have the chance to try different things, try to talk to lawyers and to program and to travel and all this stuff. At some moment, yeah, and be honest to yourself, of course.
Yeah.
At some moment, you're gonna find something that just works for you better than for other people. You know, there are so many things that I feel that do not work for me. I could not be an actor. I'm not good at acting. You know, I cannot sing. I just cannot. I tried. I'm so bad at it, you know.
But you tried. That's cool. I didn't
But I
even try.
tried. Yes, but I tried. But then I love listening to music a lot, and I hear all the small details in music, but I cannot reproduce them. I'm technically not built the way to do that.
Yeah.
But I'm built to do some other things. When I played tennis for the first time, I played with someone who played tennis for 5 years, and I played for the first time and I won. You know, how's that? Like, turns out I have some inclination toward that thing, you know,
Wow.
but I cannot act. I don't need to act. I can play tennis. You know, I think it's so natural for all of us.
I think
That's why the most important thing in the world, I guess, for humanity is culture. You know, culture. If we build the right culture for our kids, and for the whole society, then we can help each other. Then we should create an environment where it will be safe to be your true self in the society, because we put so much pressure on each other of what is good and what is not, what's normal, what's not, that everyone is trying to be some average normal person that the society is expecting us to be. But that's not cool. If we just let people be themselves, just let anyone do what they do, we're gonna, you know, there is a chance of exponential growth of humanity as species if we find a way to build better culture.
I agree, especially like for kids, like you said, to let them explore and then try to find what is it that they're naturally inclined to do, which is what Robert Greene also talks about, this, like the natural inclinations. When you were a kid, what were you naturally drawn towards? Like what inspired you? What made you like want to play with it? And we as adults, we usually kill this in kids. We say, oh, you need to study. It's not about you need to study. It's about encouraging the kid to learn more of the things that they're interested in. Obviously, there are other things they need to learn and need to learn, but not discouraging them from exploring their interests in a playful manner, because that's when the magic happens. And I think your kind of secret sauce and your successes in your startup and entrepreneurial endeavors was that you did not work on things that didn't excite you, and you worked on things that you naturally gravitated towards as a kid. And so natural progression development happened. Versus if, let's say, your parents were stifled you and said, oh, this is not the way to go. You need to become a lawyer or you need to become a doctor, and pushed you in that direction. Right now, we wouldn't have Hrachik Ajemian, serial founder. We would have someone, maybe mediocre doctor in Russia who's working as a doctor and nothing else. And just you, every single day, you die inside because you're not doing what you're meant to do, and because you didn't have a chance to explore yourself fully.
And it feels so great when you feel like you're doing the right thing. You know, the right thing for you in many cases is something that is not pleasant, it's not fun, it's painful, but you still feel like this is my way. like when a woman that is giving birth to a kid, it's very painful, right? It's not the most pleasant process in the world. But when you're in love with your like husband and you're happy you are expecting a kid, you're going through that process, even though it's so bad, you kind of know that this is my thing, and that feeling, it has nothing to do with joy. Like, it's not straightforward joy or happiness or something. It's something more deep, fundamental feeling that I'm doing the right thing. And when when you have that internal agreement, like feeling that this is right for me, you go through the pain and all this stuff a lot easier than when you just do not agree with the things you do. You do things you don't agree with. That's the most painful thing. Physical pain and emotional pain are nothing compared to disharmony inside the person.
100%. I felt that disharmony. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's very important to highlight the fact that entrepreneurial journey is freaking painful. It's not going to be any journey, actually. Like, if you want to be great at something, it's going to be painful. It's going to be ups and downs. And exactly that, there needs to be like an internal feeling, a sense of fulfillment that I'm doing the right thing, like that your compass is directed in the right way. You're going towards your North Star. And as you're going through it, it's going to be painful, but it doesn't stop you from that. I know that you are. Again, you've told me this before, but you are an introvert, or maybe you were an introvert and you had to kind of change. Talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey and how it changed you as a person. What were exactly the characteristics that you had to develop to fuel your growth as a CEO, as a founder, etc.?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing was when Todd left me for the first time. So we started our company. I was 16, he was 18. I was the guy who was in love with technology and was an introvert. And Todd was this extrovert guy, loved by everyone. He knew how to interact with people, how to sell, how to manage all the economics. He knew a lot. And I was just in love with technology. So we decided that I'm going to create the technology part and he's going to do the business part. And then pretty quickly, I don't know exactly how quick, but like maybe in 6 months after we started, he left the company. He was invited to PricewaterhouseCoopers, and that was his dream. And he was like, maybe I need to go. And I'm like, sure, you need to go. So he started working for PwC. And then I was left with something called a company, a couple customers, clients, and then we needed new sales. I had to go to events and meet all these guys that were like 40 years, 50 years old, and I was 16, and I need to come to them and talk to them and sell stuff being a kid. That was like very weird experience, and like no one would normally do that. I was not inclined toward that, right? At that moment. But I enjoyed the process so much. It was hard to do that, right? But I found that it works too. People had the level of expectations from me was so low from everyone's side because I was a kid that I was first listening. I was asking questions and listening, and everyone was like, well, this is just a kid. Why am I spending time on this, right? And I saw that in their eyes that they were trying to run away as soon as they could. But I was asking questions, and at some moment I was starting to talk. And then they were surprised that I talked and knew more than they would expect from 16 years old kid. And they were like, wow, this is interesting. This kid might be able to build things for us. Just because the expectations were so low, I was able to give them something, not zero. And that was already very exciting for them. And eventually that made me a pretty good salesperson. I learned to navigate those processes. I read one book on sales. which was very, very insightful for me. Like totally different way of thinking and focusing on the other things. And yeah, nowadays I'm definitely an ambivert. Like I am an extrovert and an introvert both. I definitely need time with myself after I spend time with people. Like if I'm, so I can be very extroverted for a pretty long time, but then I need, at least day or a few days just with myself,
I know, same.
But when I am extroverted and I spend time with people, it's very natural too for me. I enjoy it. I don't know. I love this result, and I'm happy that Todd left me back then, because otherwise, I'm not sure that I would have had the chance to become this version of myself, which I enjoy.
Yeah, and this proves another point that a failure in the moment seems like painful failure, right? But if you go, let's say, forward 10 years from the day that this failure happened to you, and you look back, you're able to see that actually it was there for a reason. You just didn't know at that point, and that's
Yeah,
in every situation.
absolutely. And as always, the biggest leaps, the biggest changes and upgrades you can get are when you get out of your comfort zone. And that was definitely not my comfort zone, going to those conferences and selling something. And I'm so grateful that I had to do that. And now I know I love not being in comfort zone because of that. I know that all the beautiful things in life are hidden in not comfort zones,
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put myself in not a comfort zone all the time, because it pays it pays well all the time, every time.
It pays by you having the chance to explore your limits first and foremost, and then the rest, like external validation, whatever that comes, right? But most importantly, you're able to push your limits and see that, oh well, I have explored a new angle to myself, a new dimension that I didn't know I could before have, and this kind of makes you feel whole in a certain way, I think.
Yeah, Tat and I came to this mantra of when we do, it works. It's like it's a matter of, like, it's a question of, would you do, or will you act or not? That's when you act, surprisingly, so many things that you think could never happen, like actually happen just because of the action. So but it's so hard to act when you don't believe in yourself, when you have all these internal limits, right? So question is, how do you find an energy to go and do things that look like unrealistic for you? And there's all the beautiful things that come after that.
Amazing. I know we're at time, so I'm just going to ask you a last quick question, which is if you could leave aspiring entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs with one thing, one advice from you, what would that be?
Yeah, it's different for different people, actually. And different people have different ways of, we all have some natural inclinations that we don't need to learn. And whatever I say now, some people are already like that, but there's something different for them.
True.
So given that, I think the only thing that's true to all of us is being honest to yourself. Probably that's the biggest thing, like that's applicable to any human being. Like, listen to yourself, ask yourself, what do I honestly think? How do I honestly feel when no one's looking? And that's the question that needs to be asked as often as possible.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Hrachik. I enjoyed this discussion a lot, and I took more time, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it too.